welcome everyone to Politically High Tech with your host, Elias. I'm going to talk about a topic that, let's be quite honest, we're so distracted with so many current events, geopolitical events, that we forget that this exists. Critical race theory. I know some people say, oh, you talked about that a few years ago. Can we move on? Well, I have an expert here who's going to strongly disagree, and just because the media is no longer talking about it doesn't mean it magically disappears. A lot of people just tend to have that perception. Oh, media's not talking about it. It's not trending. Okay, the problem's gone. It magically disappears. You just forget all about it. Out of sight, out of mind. No. I have a guest here who's going to talk why CRT is probably stronger than ever. Probably a little hyperbolic on my part. I'm going to have him clear any preconceived notions that I have here. And we're going to talk about why CRT is BAD. Bad. Okay. We're going to play acronym letter games. I can play that game with you too. So, I have a guest here who has done extensive work on this, and it is actually quite concerning, the CRT. You know what CRT stands for? Just in case you forget, I'm sure many of you have forgotten, critical race theory. Okay, critical race theory. That's what it stands for. And of course, people on the right were very critical. They were against it. The left sometimes played it off like the right wingers were crazy. Those who are more intellectually honest about it said, no, it's a good thing. We gotta teach the kids why America is such a racist and bad country. So that's what we have here. So I have Dr. George S. Maruer. Okay, and he's going to introduce himself, and we're going to get deep into this CRT and probably a few random political, historical topics. That's if it's permitted. Can't promise that. But go right ahead. Go introduce yourself.
I just want to say thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Well, my background is I'm a retired Air Force Master Sergeant, was in military journalism. And when I retired from the Air Force, I went back to school. And while I was working on my doctoral degree, around 2020-ish, there was a subject being talked about called critical race theory. And I knew that I was in for a 2 or 3 year ride with my dissertation, and it was going to have to be a subject that I would be interested in. And as a conservative, I found that when I got into discussions with my liberal friends, they accused me of being a racist pretty much all the time. And I would say I'm not a racist, and I'd have to defend myself. And so with critical race theory, that's kind of what I saw was, people, defending themselves over this issue. Anybody who disagreed with it was automatically a racist. And it was, honestly, calling someone a racist is a pretty disgusting thing to do. Being a racist is a disgusting thing. And accusing someone of being racist without any real evidence is a pretty horrible thing to do. And so, you get thick skin after a while, but it still bothers me that people just assume that's who I am. So I saw this as an important subject, one that I would be interested in. And when people started talking about critical race theory, there was a lot of confusion out there. And so my intended audience include parents who don't know what critical race theory is, want to know more about it. If they happen to run across it, what they can do about it if they don't want their children being exposed to it. And so I took my dissertation, I turned it into a book. I took it out of academic ease, the writing you need to write to pass, any academic class, which often is pretty silly language. That's the way they want it. And so I turned it into regular English as best I could, try to make it as plain English as possible so that anybody can read it and understand. So, and the book was released in May, and here I am.
There's a few things that stick out to me. Normally, a conservative will admit that it bothers them, which is interesting to
Hmm.
me because I do see a lot of patterns and I do pick up on patterns. It's
Sure.
because, I mean, me to be honest, they even accuse me of racism even when I just question critical race theory. I say, "Are you sure this is the right thing for them? We want to elevate them and teach them math, life
Yeah.
skills, science, history, and all that. They'd have them form their opinions. If they don't like America, at least they reach that conclusion naturally, organically, or the opposite end. They love America so much they will defend it to death. But yeah, to that, because a lot of conservatives want to act like they're stoic and cold half the time. Oh, these things don't bother me. These are just words, Feelings are for the liberals, which I find that ridiculous sometimes. That bar I gotta kind of criticize. Not you particularly, but those right wing famous personalities, sometimes like Ben Shapiro, lest when he gets upset, especially with the Israel Hamas thing, there's a lot of criticism on that for sure. And even some of the right wing people's critical of him. But I don't want to derail it too much. I just find that just interesting. Yeah, it does bother, even though you develop a thick skin, it does bother. You just learn not to let it, be, let that reaction become so visceral that you just think you're crazy. Say,
Or,
aha! It's
yeah.
like,
Well, like I said, I mean, calling someone a racist is a horrible thing. And if you're going to do it, you better have some evidence. You should back it up in some way. And so, but that was partially the motivation behind my book. So,
well, at least you're doing something productive about it instead of just, I don't know, grab a gun and shoot down a school, which is horrendous.
well,
So,
that's never a good idea, ever,
yeah,
ever.
yeah. I don't care you lean left or right or you're a super 2A person. Yeah, no. 2A is supposed to be to defend yourself, not seek confrontation. Okay? Now
Correct.
I'm talking to the fringe far right here. I'm sure most right wingers even understand that concept very well. So I'm just be very clear about that criticism.
Well,
Like
you'd
the
be
fringe
surprised.
ones.
A lot of mass shootings tend to be actually far left extremists. That's been my take on things.
That's
I
true.
know, I know the way it's presented in the news is always that it's a right wing extremist, but I mean, the shooter in Tennessee was was some kind of a trans person, and he had some theory written up, that they didn't release to us because it kind of exposed who he was, and he certainly wasn't a far right guy. He was definitely far left. I mean, you go Sandy Hook. I mean, you go to all of these things, and if you read the manifestos of these shooters, they tend to be Marxists and socialists and Antifa. I mean, not. I don't know if any Antifa person has done a mass shooting, but it wasn't conservatives running around burning down cities during the summer of 2020. It was Marxists, Antifa. When they call themselves anti-fascists, they say they're fighting fascism, but actually they're fascists. You know, how how did they fight anti-fascism? By using fascism. And so it's sort of like, well, I'm going to fight crime, and I'm going to fight crime by throwing a rock through that store window over there and taking out a couple of computers and leaving. You know, and in my research for my book, anti-racism, sort of the same thing. I'm an anti-racist. Okay, great. And then they begin to say the most racist things you've ever heard in your life. So you're being racist, you're defeating racism by being racist. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. So anyway, I got off on a little bit of a tangent there. I apologize.
No apologize. It's free flowing conversation, and that was the next thing I was gonna bring up. Just like I was criticizing the few far right, the far left, which you already said it for me. Y'all are guilty of some of this violence too. You already mentioned Antifa. I've been very critical of Antifa, and I even told BLM if you want your movement to has more credibility, you better separate yourselves from Antifa as much as possible. Or I don't even care if you have to physically beat them up. I don't care. Do a little something. because they are ruining your movement. I don't support BLM either. I was very critical of that movement. So I was called, I even almost lost a friend over that discussion. I didn't even care. So no, I'm going to stand my ground. You can shout and yell at me all you want, but you're not helping your cause. And for that, you just proved me right as a skeptic who don't trust think tank movements naturally. You just prove my point. It's a shouting and yelling is not going to help. It's, oh, wait. Oh, no, I understand. If you pay attention to the top people in leadership have stole over close to $100 million, all right? It just enriched themselves. It's
Yeah.
a scam. You've been robbed. I'm sure some BLM people had some good intent, but I'm not going to get too deep into that. But y'all been robbed.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
fraud.
the thing was for BLM, they went into those cities, caused a lot of damage, and you're right. When they raised more than $100 million directly, and then billions of dollars indirectly. They got Starbucks and Netflix and Amazon and JP Morgan Chase to promise to spend money on diversity programs, in the billions. They promised to spend, billions of dollars doing these things. But the problem was when they left, Ferguson, Missouri, for example, they burned the place down, collected all that money, but never used any of that money to actually rebuild the city and to help the folks, the folks that were probably, the worst off. It wasn't the nice neighborhoods they were burning down. It was the at-risk neighborhoods, the poor neighborhoods. Those were the ones that suffered the most. And those are the folks that, can ill afford to suffer even more than where they're at now. And they were the biggest victims of these riots. And when they left, they took all their money with them. And, hey, good luck on your burned down neighborhood, but we're going to go back to wherever we're going, and we're going to go buy a $6 million house in LA and pay, my ex-husband $1 million for consulting. you know, uh, I mean, I agree. And you said you're African American, correct? Or are
Uh,
you?
no, no, I am a
Okay.
mixed race person. I have some
Okay, a
Latino
mixed race
descent.
person. Okay, that's fine. But as a mixed race person, like you were saying in your thing, you are expected to support organizations like BLM. And when you don't, see, when I do it, oh, you're just another white racist, blah, blah, blah. But when you do it, see, you're a traitor. That's different. I'm just a regular racist. I'm a white supremacist racist according to their rules. You, my friend, are a traitor to their race. Even worse. You are even worse. So, like you said, I'm sure you've seen it many times.
Counter for one of them even dared to call me a supporter of white supremacy. I laughed it off. I said, "You're
Yeah,
stupid and insane. You're not worth talking to. You have a nice life. Get locked up in the mental ward because you're just gonna say I'm supporting of white supremacy. I've criticized KKK. I even criticized even the January 6th thing, even though it's not insurrection, it was more of a breach, the Capitol
right.
building. That's war. That's why I categorize it. Regardless, it should never happen, in my honest opinion, but it
Yeah,
did. So,
yeah. They should not have done it.
I'm an independent minded person. So I hate this
Sure.
race thing, this group tank thing, and that's what really actually pisses me off. I
Right.
said, no, you
And that's
expect
the
me to
thing.
support one way because of my skin color. Do you know
Yeah,
how racist that preconceived notion is?
exactly. Exactly. It's extremely racist. And that's what I'm saying. And that's one of the points that I made in my book is these anti-racists, CRT supporters, in their mind, in order to make racism better in the country, they're being racist. They're teaching children of color, African American children, Hispanic children, indigenous children, that they should be angry at white children. And they're teaching the white children that they should be ashamed of themselves, their families, their histories, their culture, all these things. And It just does not make any sense. If you do, well, you got to do more than 15 minutes of research, because the first 50 things, if you Google CRT, the first 50 things will say that CRT is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But if you do some in-depth look, and you can see some of the lessons. There was a kindergarten class. A parent went into their child's classroom, and there was a white piece of paper, and they were doing a lesson on freedom. And how they were discussing freedom was these 5 and 6-year-old children were instructed to discuss the following sentences. Whites have more than blacks. Whites oppress blacks. Whites harass people of color, and you must fight in a war. Now, I don't know very many adults who could sit down, mixed race group, and have that discussion in an emotionally mature way. Now imagine what it's going to do to a 5 and 6-year-old child. And that is basically what you have with critical race theory. And to kind of explain what it is, and if you're confused by it and don't know, don't feel bad. It's by design, in my opinion. They don't want you to know what this stuff is. They want to confuse you. And when I say they, by the way, I mean critical race theory supporters, and official and unofficial. The official ones are the school curriculum designers, the school board, the administrators. The unofficial ones are people who just support it because they think it's a good thing. And so, but critical race theory and ethnic studies are not the same thing. Ethnic studies is the healthy, positive learning of one's culture, which leads to self-awareness, self-confidence, all the things that one needs to be successful in life. And critical race theory, on the other hand, is the relentless focus on only our worst moments without giving due credit to the positive things that we have done over the last 75, 60 odd years or so. And we've come a long way. I mean, in 1960, a very courageous young lady, African-American young lady named Ruby Bridges, she was 6 years old at the time, walked into a formerly segregated school with adults screaming racial epithets at her. I mean, horrible, disgusting things. And she went in there and she went to school. And then you have, people like Emmett Till, who it's Mississippi, it's Alabama. I always get them mixed up. I believe it's Mississippi. Emmett Till in Mississippi, 1955, he was 14 years old, flirted with a white woman, and he was murdered for it right there on the street. I mean, we had a real problem. I mean, we have a problem now too, but it's not what it once was. And we happen to live in one of the most racially tolerant societies in the world. The West in general is very tolerant of race, of diversity, of different races. If you really want to see true racism, go to some place like India. Go to Asia in general, the Middle East. That is racism. That is, it might as well be Jim Crow still in places like that. But here, people of all colors have all the opportunity in the world. If you happen to be an African American gentleman, and if you want to make a good life for yourself, you can by making the right choices. You don't get a girl pregnant in high school. You finish, this goes for all races, okay? You finish high school, you get your high school diploma, you find that you get a good trade, but there's no one that's going to keep you down or keep you away from those things based on your race alone. If you can't get into a certain college, maybe, like me, I was not good at school when I was in high school. I had horrible grades. I ended up going to a junior college out of high school to try to get my grades back up so I could get into a decent 4-year school. And so, I mean, these things happen to people of all races. All races. So, but the worst thing, getting back to the critical race theory versus ethnic studies, the real crime is that critical race theory hijacks ethnic studies. Because the people who need these positive, healthy ethnic studies programs more than anyone are children at risk students who, again, are often living in the worst neighborhoods, the worst cities in the country. And the thing is, underperforming scholastically, there's something called the achievement gap where they say, white kids and Asian kids perform better than African Americans and Hispanic and indigenous. And they want you to think it's a race thing, but more recent research says it's actually socioeconomic. If you have a middle class family of all races, of different races, their children tend to perform about the same. My girlfriend is Hispanic, and their daughter is a nurse, and their son-in-law just graduated from veterinary school. These are high achieving kids. Just because they're Hispanic it doesn't mean they've done less than the white kids next door. They've probably done more than the
Let
white
me
kids
throw in
next
some
door.
stereotypes real quick. This is the
Sure.
real look of Hispanic people. We bailando, we good at dancing and partying and flirting,
Okay.
all that good stuff. That's what we're
Yeah,
good
yeah.
at. No, we're not good at school. I no me importa. They don't care about the school. We don't care about all of that. That's what we've been conditioned to believe. I will especially blame on mainstream entertainment, television, and even social media. Because rather it's intentional or not, they enforce
Yeah.
some of those
Yeah.
stereotypes just for
Well,
the relevant discussion.
sure. No problem. But what you're saying kind of carries along with what I'm saying is you have this at-risk student of color, of any race, and they have this ethnic studies program which could help them get their life on track. Maybe they're in a situation where they don't live in the best environment. Maybe like my parents, I grew up in a single family home, deadbeat dad, and my mom was in survival mode. And so when I was struggling in school, she didn't know how to get me the help that I really needed. And even the school just you know, kind of just let me get by, so to speak. But I never really got the help that I needed because I was in a bad situation. Now, if you have a student of color who possibly could use this ethnic studies class, whenever an at-risk student, again, of all colors, gets into these ethnic studies courses, all the good things go up. Better attendance, better grades, all of it, all of the bad things go down. They're not getting into trouble. They're not getting, maybe they're not getting involved with those bad folks on the streets, but if they've got this education, they can look to a future. But when they don't have this ethnic studies program, they don't have that hope. And without hope, that's when you get kids in trouble. That's when you get the school to prison pipeline, all of those things, to drugs, all of the bad things. And ethnic studies provides hope for these children who may not get it anywhere else. And unfortunately, critical race theory pollutes that source of hope for these kids.
And let me just add a little historical context, going back to that lovely young lady that had to be walked to school with, I think, with the army.
Ruby
Yeah, and this
Bridges,
is
right.
yeah, Ruby Bridges. Yeah, I always forget that name for some odd reason. I remember that I had to study that. I said, "Oh wow, that's interesting. That happened during a Republican presidency."
Mm,
Dwight D. Eisenhower. He was. I hate to use this word, but it puts it simply beautifully. He was really anti-racist. If he was like a real racist Republican president, it's just who cares? They throw rocks at her, so be it. One less colored person to worry about. But that's not what happened.
no, not at
The
all.
army protected her from those racist people, sadly mostly white at that time,
Yeah.
that were throwing, oh, bunch of nasty words. The N word. I'm not going to say that. And
Right.
I'm sure other racially insensitive remarks, compared to a certain animal. You know which ones. Tarzan. Just look at that. Look at that jungle. You know which animal's pretty prevalent there, and other filthy, filthy remarks that
Well, what
I
a
think we
lot of
made
people,
progress. We made progress, but
we've made tremendous
I still believe
progress.
there's room to improve. Yeah,
But what a lot of people don't realize is that, it was the Republicans who primarily fought to free the slaves. It was the Republicans who voted more in favor of civil rights. It was the Republicans who fought to end Jim Crow. It was the Democrats who were the Southern Democrats, they were the slave owners. Southern Democrats were the people who made up the Ku Klux Klan. Southern Democrats were the ones who instituted Jim Crow laws. It was a Southern Democrat, Robert Byrd, former Klansman, by the way, who put on the most famous filibuster in our government's history. For 70, I think it was 72 days or something insane like that. Yeah, maybe not that long. I may be exaggerating there, but it's the single longest filibuster in American history. He was a Democrat, and he was trying to stop the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And there's this perception that Republicans have are the racist people and the Democrats are not. But honestly, who was it wasn't it wasn't the Republicans who said things about President Barack Obama like, oh, he's so well spoken. What does that mean? Of course he's well spoken. I mean, he's a college educated guy, running for president. Oh, he's clean. Our current president, by the way, Joe Biden, referred to him as clean. Oh, wow, fantastic. We have an African American gentleman who knows how to bathe himself once a day. I mean, and those are the things I'm not saying there aren't racist Republicans, but the Democrats, they get away with some of the most racist things you've ever heard in your life because the press protects them. And so, just again, anti-racists are the most racist people in the world. That's just the conclusion after 3 years of research. That was the conclusion that I reached.
my DEI experience, and I joined just to see what it was all about. A lot of it, in my personal experience, is a sham. And you say consultants. I love that word. I call consultants. You see what I did
Mm-hmm.
there? A little change of the sound makes all the difference. No. I'm not gonna change the letters. Consultants, not consultants. Consultants.
Right.
It's a lot of McConning, and they're just grifting, just for money, and that's what I'm led to believe because I have yet to see very effective DEI. I mean, listeners, if you're left leaning, you're pro DEI, try to give me evidence, try to convince me. So far, I haven't seen much, and a lot of corporations have rejected it, or they just celebrate it when it's convenient. Because that's
Yeah,
what they
they're
do
starting
too.
to they're starting to get rid of it in a lot of places. And even there was an article that came out this week. My Facebook page, post, I go out and I look for stories about critical race theory. And my Facebook page, which is the title of my book and my name, it's Critical Race Theory in Your School: How to Fight Back by Dr. George Maruer, because I don't believe in cute titles. I, put it out there. And so one of the stories that I posted that I ran into this week was um, a group looked at DEI in the Defense Department. And what they found was that DEI is making the Defense Department less lethal. And the military's job, when you get down to the core, is to to kill people and break things in the defense of the United States. And unfortunately, so many of these resources have been diverted away from their actual mission capabilities into this social justice DEI arena, that they've determined the Defense Department is less lethal today because of DEI. And it's the same thing in these schools. When you introduce critical race theory, instead of teaching math, you're teaching CRT. And out here in California, a whole bunch of there's a thing called equity math out here. And a whole bunch of professors, STEM professors, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, STEM, got together and they wrote a letter to the governor. And they said, hey, this equity math thing, 1,200 of them, we are not for it. We want to stop it. And what you are creating with equity math is a brave mathless new future. So instead of teaching algebra, you're teaching them that you should be mad at white people. Instead of teaching geometry, you're teaching white kids they should be ashamed. They should be ashamed of themselves. Same with trig. And I mean, any class that gets introduced critical race theory in it or DEI in the workplace, you're taking it away from what the primary goal of that organization is, or the class, or the military, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that was actually very frightful for me. And the armies want to accept people that is willing, they have that mental, they do well mentally, physically, all that, follow commands,
Yeah.
all that. They really care about color.
No. In my 22 years in the military, you know what I cared about? Are you going to do your job today or not? If you did your job, I could care less what you look like. Purple hair, well, you can't do purple hair in the military, but I mean, color, race, ethnicity, gender, I don't care. I never cared. What I wanted to know was, we are a group of 4 people. We've got to do this mission today. And I want everybody in this group to do their part. Come together as a team, do your part. Nothing else mattered. And I worked with people of all races and all areas of the country from, all over. And honestly, people are people. They're just people are people. You treat them with respect, they treat you with respect. Unless, you get a few crazy ones in there once in a while, but for the most part, people are people.
Oh yeah, it kind of branched out a bit. That's okay. I'm not surprised. I'm used to it. Sometimes I even encourage it subtly. So, if you want to blame me, audience, go right ahead. I'm a grown person. I have thick skin, literally and figuratively. So, come at me. I'll be okay. I'll just read your comment and ignore it. That's what's going to happen. Just document your own stupidity. Gonna keep it there because I don't believe in censorship, but I do believe in expose the bad apples and let the so-called public square have its moment. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about that. This is great. This CRT studies DI has expanded even beyond schools. That's why we mentioned all of this. It's focused on schools, but it spread so much. You spread on jobs and military, like you said, and a lot of them just drop because it's not economically feasible and let me use it word sustainable.
Correct.
So
correct.
It's. I said, look, a lot of these businesses are just gonna do it when it's easy, when they got money. But once he's burnt through enough cash, they're gonna let them go. And I'm not surprised. In a few years, I was correct. A lot of people just said, "Wow, how do you know this?" Their business. They care about making money at the end of the day. It's that simple.
Right.
Thus, it takes putting basic things together instead of being deep and ingrained and brainwashed by your own personal beliefs. Sometimes you gotta go beyond that, and that's why people who just so addicted to self are stupid. And there's a lot of biblical quotes that go against that, but I'm not going to turn this into a biblical podcast. I could easily do that if I let myself go, but I'm not going to do that. So I just want to get to slightly nitty bitty. How do the school administration, even the teachers, I blame some of the teachers too, because a lot of them are brainwashed and all of that. That's what they're able to pull this off. How are they aligned to pass? What specific tactics they use. You already said it's confusing and curriculum design and all that, but I just want to have at least some specifics on how they're deceiving parents. And by the way, some parents have withdrawn their students out of there because of the stuff that you talked about. By the way,
Sure.
it is, and some of them are even black, few even Latino that pulled out of it because they want their kid to be smart. Now it becomes to some Marxist minion. Go right
Yeah.
ahead.
The specific techniques are pretty simple. When you write a textbook, all of the good people are Democrats and people of color. When you have to point out a bad person or something bad, you use a white Republican. And it's that kind of subliminal, but I mean, it goes beyond that, but that's just one technique. The other technique is called the psychology of shame. Okay. Wit and Wisdom was a reading program in Tennessee, and some of the parents became alarmed from the reading materials that their children were required to do. And so they began to look into it, the adults. And when the parents were going through these books and these lessons one at a time, they noticed a pattern: negative, 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 all bad, always bad. And so one of the parents went to a psychiatrist and said, "Hey, what is this?" And the psychiatrist called it the the psychology of shame. And what the psychology of shame is, it's a form of brainwashing. It is the same one they used in Nazi Germany. It's the same one they used in Red China. It's the same one they used in Soviet Russia way back when. And what they do is they are stripping what you are as a person down to nothing. If you're proud of your country, they tell you your country is racist. If you're proud of who you are, they tell you you are a horrible person. You are a racist. Your family is racist. Your skin color is racist. And once you've been broken down enough, then they can begin to institute these new ideas in there. And so, to give you an example, there was one book in second grade where there were students, Hispanic students and white students, going to school in the same place. And the illustrations in one illustration showed the Hispanic children eating lunch in a cow field next to a cow pie with flies around it, while the white students were inside on a nice bench and having a nice meal. Another illustration showed the white children in a pool swimming, and the Hispanic children were outside the fence, and the fence was like bars, like prison bars. And there was a sign next to the pool that said, public swimming pool, no dogs or Mexicans allowed. And sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's in your face. Another thing, the Ruby Bridges story, they included a photo from Norman Rockwell that he created at the time. And Ruby Bridges was walking past a wall, and sort of subdued but visible was the N-word. Cute little girl walking, with her books and all, and then the N-word on the wall. It was a very famous Norman Rockwell thing. And it brought attention at the time. It brought attention to what was going on. But in the book, in the teacher's guide, if none of the young students notices the N-word, the teacher is required to point it out and have a discussion about what the N-word is. So if your child is not a racist before taking that particular course or reading that particular book, the teaching guide instructs the teacher to ensure they become a racist. And one of the things that alerted this was the woman who created this group called Moms for Liberty. Miss Robin Steenman is her name. And her daughter always described her playmates by the boy in the yellow shirt, the girl in the purple shoes. Never once did she ever call them by race. After watching one 13-minute CRT video, the phrases "that black girl" and "that white boy" became permanent fixtures in her language. In 13 minutes, they stole her innocence, basically. So,
Listeners, I know some of you are utterly offended, especially if you're a left wing or left leaning independent, or even some moderates. They kind of like a wild card sometimes, moderates. But I hope you're mature enough to at least understand, or even, I'm going to use this word with risk, empathize with what he's talking about. Because, some parents are not going to fly with this CRT, DEI stuff. I mean, you want to do that, you do that your own time. The thing I'm very critical of is, what I'm very critical of is, how they just brainwash you just to all of a sudden snap. The thing is like, oh, this Spanish boy or this black kid or this white boy, whatever. Yeah, now you start seeing some of that vitriol sort of creeping into their language, if I'm going to put it nicely. I mean, me, I try to be as innocent, but I just say as young as 9, I start having that permanent fixture more because of life experience. I wasn't very much for CRT, but it was like being raised in the streets. And that also plays an impact. I would say sometimes even more than critical race theory, if I'm going to throw them
sure.
a final counterpoint.
The one thing you have to understand, the one thing you should understand is I'm not here saying there's no racism in America, because of course there is. Of course there is. But we've come so far. We've come so far. And we have more to do. There's no doubt about it. But the positive ethnic studies courses would be a tremendous help. But the critical race theory elements are not helping. They're inflaming race relations, not making race relations better. And I think that should be the goal of most reasonable people, is for all of us to get along better. Don't you think? At least I think so. But it seems like critical race theorists, their goal is to make it worse.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I tried to even get exposed to some of the CRTGI stuff. What was it? What's his name? Abram X. Candy.
Ibram X. Kendi. He
Yeah.
is a self-proclaimed anti-racist. Again, self-proclaimed anti-racist who says some of the most racist things I've ever heard in my life. I talk about him in my book, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
I am not surprised. I have watched his talks before, and all I'm going to say is I'm not convinced, and there's even some self-contradictions to what he says. And
There's a lot of contradictions to what he says. And well, first of all, he is a self-professed Marxist. Okay. And Marxists are, class warfare people. They don't like rich people. However, Marxists never seem to mind wealth when it's their own. They're only bothered by wealth when it belongs to someone else. Ibram X. Kendi has become a very wealthy man by pushing anti-racism. And, and then he says things like, well, critical race theory is got nothing to do with my position on anti-racism. And then a month later, in another interview, he calls critical race theory foundational to all of his work. Okay, so which is it? And you know what? I mean, honestly, that's not even what I really care about. Those little semantics, whatever, I don't care about that. But what I do care about is, here is a man who is telling everyone that he's trying to make race better in America, but he's doing it in a way that inflames race relations. He's making African American people more angry and focusing on only the very worst elements of our society without giving due credit to all of the good things that we have accomplished.
I would
And he's
even
getting
add some of the white
rich.
and Hispanics as well with that kind of language. Maybe
Sure.
angry at him, or become so ashamed that they end up supporting him out of guilt. Whatever. I'll just broaden that, because I've seen, the audience was Mostly black, of course. There was also some of, lighter skin color people as well. I want to just make sure the racial context is as pure as it could possibly be. Not easy to do, by the way. It drives me crazy sometimes, but go
But the
ahead.
thing is, again, he's not helping. If you got an audience full of African Americans and they're being told they got no shot, you got no shot because the system is designed to keep you down, when really it's not. It really isn't. And if anything, affirmative action was just overturned by the Supreme Court. But up until then, affirmative action ensured that people of color did not have to perform as well as white people in order to get into schools, in order to get certain things. And, you can agree with it or disagree with it, either way. But the thing is, again, this hope is being taken away from people. And if you're an African American listening to Ibram X. Kendi talk about things, Dr. Kendi, you may really believe you don't have a shot because America is keeping you down. And the thing is, the person who has the most control over your future is the one who's looking at you in the mirror. And, and there are plenty of people in this world who have not let outside circumstances control them. And they've worked through them and past them. And, there's never a perfect situation, but if you happen to be a person of color growing up in a difficult situation, growing up in crime-ridden neighborhoods, parents who are struggling, Ibram X. Kendi is the last person that you should be listening to because he is stealing your hope.
I know that's controversial to some of you. Well, you know what? I'm not afraid of controversy. I just think as much point of view should be shared as much as possible, even stuff I personally disagree with. Okay. I'm sure some of you are emotionally boiled up, or some of you might have left this podcast. It's okay. I only want bright people, people who are willing to grow. I don't care what your political orientation is at the end of the day. I have some wonderful left wing people, wonderful right wing people. The only thing I'm going to say is I am anti Marxist and anti communist. That's one of the few hard lines that I'll draw because
Sure.
that is anti-American at its core. There is no, I mean, maybe with healthcare, I don't know how that's going to be executed, but when it comes to this rhetoric, dividing people among racial lines, it's not helping. We are regressing, not progressing. If we keep this stuff, especially if it goes out of control. I'm happy that a lot of people's fighting back against it, so there is hope. Wokeness is dying. I think the peak, we already don't. The peak, it's right going down, 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 the more people's waking up.
It is. It is, but don't expect these folks to give up anytime soon.
Oh no,
Again,
of course not.
this thing that's happening has been going on for a long time. I mean, again, this all started back in the 1800s, okay? And the ultimate goal of Marxism is to take down the West, take down capitalism, take down the nuclear family, and to install eventually Marxist governments around the world, and eventually a one world Marxist government. And the thing is, the United States is their main blockade at this time. They'll never get that one world government that they're trying to find or trying to achieve as long as America exists as it is today. And so that is why they're working so hard here. And even if you outlaw critical race theory, a lot of school systems, without saying, critical race theory, they say that you can't teach the superiority of one race over another. You can't teach one race is to blame for past crimes. You can't say one race inherently oppresses other races. You can't say any of those things. But just because you've taken the words critical race theory out doesn't mean the content is going anywhere. And all they're going to do is just change the name to something different. That content will remain. That's what, if you look, one of the things that I advise parents, if you think your kids are being exposed to critical race theory, one of the tips that I do in my book is say, go out to the course descriptions online. Look at the class description. You're not going to see the words critical race theory. You may have 4 or 5 years ago, but not anymore. They've smartened up and they removed the words critical race theory, but the content remains. Look for words like oppression, marginalization, systemic racism, white supremacy. And when you see things like that, especially in a math class or, a science class, what does that have to do with science, geography? Nothing. But it's in there anyway. And so, and they out in California, they've just started something called the California Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum. By the year 2030, it's mandatory, and it's already been implemented in many school systems across the state. It's and it is a requirement for high school graduation. 3 math classes, 2 science classes, 4 English classes, all of that. Now it's ethnic studies. Now, I went through that ethnic studies program, that curriculum. The official position for the state of California is the California Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum does not contain critical race theory. I went through the first 600 pages myself, and I found 591 references to words like marginalization, systemic racism, oppression. It's chock full of CRT, even though they say it's not. So, yeah, wokeness, people are starting to stand up against wokeness, and it is starting to turn a corner, but don't expect them to give up this fight anytime soon. They've been at it for more than 100 years. They're not going to just give up right now.
And no, that of course that's true. And we just gotta keep fighting, be vigilant. And I love what you said, changing words. They change the goals, they change the word a lot. I'm not talking Democrats, because still some good classic liberal Democrats out there. I'm talking the Marxist kind, and some of you hitting the Republican Party too. Yeah, even slicker, because you hide even
Oh,
better.
yeah.
But so listen, we have to be vigilant. We have to defend our freedoms. Of course, be proud of your cultural identity. Me personally, this podcast, I am bringing people other than white or Indian who are achieving well. Just to show you as things
Mhm.
happen. I mean, someone's going to have these opposite opinion that Dr. Maruer is saying here. That's okay. But my point is, they're being successful. They're being successful. I mean, I don't mind debates. Debates is good. Debates is exchange your ideas or defend your ideas or even modify them, wherever the outcome is, right? So as long as we're having that's good. I'm going to continue to do that because I already showed associated white Indians that come to my podcast, they're already showing success. I'm trying to bring even other people like Latinos and Hispanics, and maybe a couple of LGBTQ plus if they're willing, because I think one of them said they want me. I'll be surprised if one of them said they want a podcast because you said this and that. Well, that's too bad. That's on you. You're sensitive and you're not mature. And I know and I know personally LGBTQ people who are against the madness that's going on right now with that. But that's a whole nother beast for another day. We already covered enough here. Believe me, and sadly, they're being lumped in with this mess as well. That's one reason why I mentioned them. And good amount of them are decent folks. They fought for their rights as well. Stonewall, and all that stuff. So, and I can't believe I'm saying this after their month. So, anything else you want to add before I do a shameless plug-in?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. Just simply that my book is titled Critical Race Theory in Your School, How to Fight Back. And if you're interested in the latest news updates for critical race theory, please consider following and liking my Facebook page called Critical Race Theory in Your School, How to Fight Back by Dr. George Maruer. And I'm there. If you want to have this discussion there, I'm more than happy to have it. However, I did have to make one rule. If anybody says anything racist or hateful, I will block you and remove you because it got out of hand. It just got out of hand. And of course, I was called the most horrible names that you can possibly think of. But it wasn't doing us any good. We're here to discuss this, to exchange ideas, to share information. And it's it's hard to do that when, 99 out of 100 posts are you are a white supremacist and you hate black folks and you need to, burn in hell, basically, is what they've told me over and over and over and over, more times than I can count. So anyway, I was in the beginning, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to let people have these discussions. I'll let it go. And then it just got to be overwhelming. So I had to take a stand.
Yeah, that's
And
harassment
so,
at this point. That's harassment. You
yeah,
want
yeah,
debate and disagreement, not
of course,
freaking harassment.
not threats,
And I'm gonna
not
rant.
threats. Yeah,
Morons. Learn how to differentiate
yeah,
the. If you're gonna say he's racist, you better come with receipts and documentation. Yeah, I'm repeating that point. I am tired of going racist, racist, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist. You are diminishing people who are experiencing real racist incidents or even discrimination.
yeah,
Just
exactly.
shut the hell up. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm really done with that. Oh, hey, you're racist. You're racist. You're racist. Oh, you may be dark, but I can smell white supremacy. You're wearing a mask of it. You are a joke.
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I,
it's,
I will go on. I will regret saying a couple of things after that, but
it's okay. It's
learn
all right.
how to debate. Learn how to criticize the ideas.
Yeah.
Once you attack the person personally, you already lost the debate. And this is not coming
But
from me.
you're right.
Ugh.
When you cry wolf, you take away from someone who may be actually experiencing real racism. But when people are calling it out all the time, all the time, all the time, and then that one individual who really is being, being racist, they're treating him in a racist manner, him or her. You tend not to believe it. Oh, he's just another one of those people who always think everything is racist all the time. But you're right. Stop crying wolf, and let's make sure that where we find real racism, let's deal with it.
Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. All right, I'll calm down. It's just my little volcanic moment.
It's all right. We're all entitled to our little moments, that's for sure.
No, but it enough is enough. I mean, even I have a pretty thick tolerance skin, but it's just it's stupidness, and the same thing. I have attacked the right for their low IQ nonsense too. So I'm trying to be as fair as I can be. It's not easy
There's
being
bad actors
fair.
on both sides.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a lot of and like I said, I try to be careful. Not saying all Democrats or Republicans. No, it's certain groups of y'all that are insane. I'm trying to keep this clean because he has a curse. I want my guess to curse. I could just go off the ramp, but they've been doing better. They've been doing better on that. And eventually, maybe if I hit 40, not there yet, I would I'm not going to make the promise because once I do, I'm going to break it. I'm going to find a little reason to break it. I'm like that. I can't do promises. I'm like psychologically damaged on that. What comes to that word promise? I don't know. I probably need help, but
You
that's a
seem
whole
to be
other
doing
thing.
just fine to me. Yeah.
For now. Okay, let me stop. Let me stop being dramatic. All righty, let's do a shameless plug in capitalism, which I'm in strong support of, even though it's imperfect, but I still believe it's the best system we have. It's the best one we have. Just me, this communist Marxism has killed nearly countless amount of people. I won't be surprised to add a billion if you want to add probably all the history. Probably a little hyperbolic. Definitely hit the millions already. Definitely hit the millions. But the billions is probably a little hyperbolic. All right, so get ready.
About 100 million to the best of my knowledge. Maybe a little more.
Okay, yeah. You see, 100 million sounds more rational. Yeah, a billion is very high. Now that I'm being dramatic. Let me just be clear. I'm being dramatic. But it's very detrimental and has caused a lot of chaos. It sounds good and promising because it's tracking a lot of the poor people that don't see hope, like you said. They don't see hope, so they see this as their hope, ironically, because the system is against them. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So, alrighty then. Before I wrap this up, have you considered subscribing? I don't mind a little donation or even a little. Anyway, I'm going to start putting a few exclusive episodes on the paywall, and these are the ones that are going to be definitely high quality. I mean, I already try to make the free ones high quality, but this one's going to be more polish, more effects, and all that other stuff to make it super engaging. It's going to be a few, and I put it as low as $3 a month. Look, I'm not asking for I'm not asking for it at all. If you feeling generous, you could do donate there. And there's even a one time option as well. So it's just okay. I'll give you $10 this one time, and that's it. I can't anymore, and it's fine because I want to do bigger, better things for this podcast. I have to do some travel and all that. That stuff is going to cost money. It's all going for business, building podcast studio, those kind of things. But you'll get the gist. I'm not going to bore you all the details. But if you want no more, you can contact me on my Facebook, my Twitter, and even YouTube as well. You have a blessed day, afternoon, or night.